Hey everyone, welcome to, I guess, the second podcast, but the first video podcast on honest conversations. And who better to bring on to a conversation but my one and only wife? We just get to go into the details of things that matter to us, things that matter probably to you too. And the premise of this honest podcast, this whole series, is going to be bringing up real conversations, bringing in real people to talk about the things nobody wants to talk about, or everybody wants to talk about but nobody actually engages in because we're worried about what other people are going to think. And I think it's time for us to just bring it up into the open and just say what is really going on, and in hopes that it would actually help you, the viewer, to process, to go deeper with your family, with your wife, your children, your friends, and just do what you need to do. Yeah, so welcome and enjoy our normal conversations in the day in the life of the Truters. Yeah.
So what I took away from your conversation with the Yo in the first podcast, because I wasn't there for it, I just listened to it when you put it out a few weeks ago. I was like, oh, it just sounds like you guys are talking. It honestly sounds like I'm just listening to you guys on a coffee. Like, you're just chilling at the coffee shop and like chatting about life and like having your normal conversation. And I really appreciate that. And I hope that this whole vibe stays with the podcast like throughout its lifetime, because I just can feel your heart that you're wanting it to be a vulnerable space, a place that feels real for people. I really felt that when I listened to the first one, that it was just, I mean, I don't think you guys even had any prompts. You were like, let's just talk.
I think the first podcast actually started in mid-conversation.
Yeah,
or like,
you just were like, let me click record.
Or we recorded and we said more stuff, but I felt like
Yeah.
the point wasn't that it would be super polished, but that it would actually just be, okay, welcome to our lives.
Yeah.
You're in the living room, you're having that conversation with us, or you're a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
And that's the point. We're not getting on celebrities or people we think aren't important. The point is that we're getting in real people, and everybody is just, everybody's normal. Everybody's the same. We're going through crap. We're going through different situations, and it's just good for us to like air out some stuff, you know?
And I think what I think is so great about that, honestly, like today we wanted to talk about confidence, and honestly, in my mind, well, I'm a busy person, you know, I have stuff going on in my life. Why would I want to take time? Why would I want to take 45 minutes out of my day or an hour and a half out of my day to spend time listening to, like, you talk to random nobody people, you know? And even like when you asked me to talk, I was like, what do I have to even say? I'm already like disregarding the value I could bring, or the value that what I would perceive as a nobody. I mean, I feel like I think pretty well of people in general. I have a high value for people. I'm not saying like they're not valuable, but you know, if I want to learn about, I don't know, like baby things, because we have a 2-year-old, or toddler things, or potty training or whatever, then I'm like, let me find an expert. And I feel like this world we're living in, it's like all about, let me find an expert on this thing or that thing. And that's so good when you need to learn. But so often you learn from people who've gone through a process. You learn from these people who are experts because they've gone through a process. And how cool it is that you can sit down with these people who don't have a platform. They're just people we know who are amazing people. And they are in the middle of their process, in the middle of whatever it is that they're learning or growing in. And like, that is actually really refreshing to me. It like helps me see the gaps in my own level of confidence I feel for myself and what I could bring to others, and what I view, like the value I view that other people could bring too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm just verbally processing.
Yeah, that's great. That's the point of all this.
But at first I was like, oh, why would someone want to listen to a podcast that's just you talking to randos, you know? But then I was like, that's exactly what we need. That's what this generation needs. That's what I need. I just need to hear from another mom who is just trying her best every day and doing life and trying to love her family and navigating through all the throes of life and the good and the bad and the ugly, versus so many times what we're listening to is just the people who've like reached a level. Do you
Totally.
get what I'm trying to say?
100%. I'm thinking about, it's been a while since I've listened to podcasts because I feel like the people, like my natural tendency is to doom scroll, as you know very well, and want to throw my phone against the wall. Like Carl Linds's podcasts.
I love that.
That, like, listen to a
Yeah.
podcast, regardless of what happened in the past or what's happening now, there's something
Yeah.
about the way they spoke that I was like, wait, I
Yes.
speak like this every day. I'm not perfect. My speech is not polished. I get frustrated all the time about things.
Yeah.
And obviously you're in the brunt of my venting or my criticism or whatever is coming out of me. It seems as though like we've forgotten about this part of authenticity and just saying it how it is.
Yeah.
And listening to that, I was like, oh man, I can do that. We do that every day. Why not just like show that to the world?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's not really about if it's somebody who's famous or not famous or has platform or doesn't. It doesn't matter if it's Justin Bieber or if it's my next door neighbor. Like that actually is irrelevant. It actually is just about what's the level of authenticity that you're willing to show up and be vulnerable with your process.
Right.
Because we're all like, I mean, there's things that I've gone on a journey with in my life years ago that I'm like, okay, I feel like pretty good in that space. But I've never, probably never, I'm almost certain there's never going to be a point in my life that I've fully gone through the journey and the process and arrived in every single area, It's just we're always growing. There's always new challenges we hit into.
Right.
And so there's always going to be a place in your life that you can be vulnerable.
100%.
Like you're never going to arrive at a place where you're like, I'm actually pretty good. Like don't need to be vulnerable.
Absolutely. So what is it about this confidence thing? Because you kind of brought up the topic, like bringing on guests. The point is like, hey, so what's burning in your heart? What things are important to you? Let's give that out for free, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What is it about confidence?
Well, I think that it's a thing that we talk about a lot just as a culture right now. And I feel like, even if like we started watching Shrinking, the show Shrinking on Apple TV a few days ago, we were like,
ridiculous.
We're already like 10 episodes in and we only started it like a day or two ago. Right. But we were just like, this is so good. But I just feel like it's so reflective of the fact that even like, not even in this spiritual like community or Christian community, but like our society at large right now is just really realizing how much we just want to be healthy and whole as people.
Yeah.
You see it everywhere. You see it in every industry that like it's happening across the board. And like you see it when you watch the show Shrinking. And This Is Us. When we watch This Is Us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, everyone's looking for answers. And if you don't know how to get it, the journey is probably going to look pretty broken and frustrating.
Yeah.
And
just a lot of circles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time. I think yesterday we were watching an episode, and the day before we watched a couple of episodes, every time I go to bed, I'm like, dang, I've learned so much.
Really?
Yeah, because...
Like what from this last episode we watched?
I think there was just an overarching thing of all these people. I can see myself in all these people.
Yeah.
Especially like I opened myself in I'm displeased with how things are running in the church. I'm displeased with how I have become kind of complacent in the realm of Christianity, complacent in prayer. And I'm like, man, I just came through 3 years of school,
and you're like, how does that happen?
Like,
what's wrong with me that
has none of this stuck into my head?
Yeah.
I just feel like more than that, it's coming back to another conversation we had before, talking about the mundane life, and how it can kind of strip you quickly from your accolades or the things that matter to you or the things you think you're going to accomplish quickly. And it comes back to this place of, man, stuff takes longer than you expect.
Yeah.
And being okay with that process is much harder than I expected.
Yeah.
I look okay and I go through my process, but I'm like, I can say I'm probably endlessly frustrated with the process, and I'm impatient. I want it to happen now as quick as possible. And sometimes I'm super hard on myself. The people who are close to me know that.
Yeah.
Like, I am hard on myself, and
you just expect
I was like, all
of
right.
it's kind of unreasonable.
Kind of like, the Bible is like, if you were given much, or you have, if you know more,
those
you're
who are faithful, or those who have been given much is
expected from
is that
them.
what it,
yeah. And I'd say, obviously, like, I don't want to put myself like, oh, I'm a teacher. But at the end of the day, like, if you have influence over people at all, and people look up to you in any retrospect, do you feel this feeling of, I have to walk the walk and talk the talk?
And then you analyze every part of your life that's not up to that level.
Right.
And you're like, oh, who am I that? And that goes back to the confidence thing.
All of it's intertwined.
Yeah.
Confidence comes back to, I'm humbled. Being humble brings you back to humility. Humility points you back to being confident. It's just like a circle in a way.
Isn't that actually kind of crazy how connected like humility and true confidence like actually are?
Right. You think the opposite. You think the more confident you are, the cockier you get.
Yes.
The more you lose humility.
But the people who are the most like cocky and stuff is usually like the people who have a lot of insecurities.
Yeah.
And, you know, same in our own life. We're not talking like above anybody.
No. And areas of my insecurities, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you overcompensate to try. I just think going to work, you know, it's like, I think I know this, or I want to be seen in a certain way.
It's like you want to prove yourself.
And when you try and prove yourself, you generally, it doesn't go as well as you think it does. And you fall hard.
And what do you do in those moments where you are faced with that, like, oh, crap, I'm not, like, to the level that I think I should be?
Right.
Like, what do you do when you're there? What do you, like, personally, like, do you have
like, I'm a verbal processor, so generally I would come talk to you, or I guess I would just get busy. Like, that's my, I guess my
that's your
Achilles.
go-to. Yeah, there's so many different terms that people in psychology and therapy would call that, but like it's your go-to like soother.
Right.
Like,
I guess
numbing
we
agent.
are both, we love the Enneagram, and like I put myself in the 3 category. You obviously 9. Another long story. Probably do a podcast on that at some point, but definitely the desire to be loved and be seen by people, and to be the best at everything that I do. And it's rough, man. It's rough not feeling like you're measuring up consistently. Especially when we just got married, I was a cocky piece of work. I was like, in some areas I could see myself having humility, but a lot of other areas I just thought I had it together. I thought I had it, and people around me saw the truth, but I was blind to it because I had this fervency, like, this is what I will do with my life and nothing will derail me. And then the next year was completely different.
Yeah.
I had lost all confidence.
We've probably all, like, you guys listening, you've probably all gone through something. I mean, think of 2020, the entire, like, pandemic. Like, you've gone through something in your life where you, like, really expected something and then it just doesn't happen the way you expect. And that is just such a confusing thing you have to work through, where you're like, did I get myself here? What could I have done differently? Am I a mess?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think where to go next.
Oh, it's fine. You can process it because I can cut it accordingly.
Yeah. Well, let's just go off that because that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So, So I wrote down this question for you when I was thinking about what we were going to talk about, like, last week. And it was like, so basically, you know, for people who don't know you, you can share this, like, in your own way. Yeah. But my recap of you as your wife is that when I met you, you were, like, traveling and, like, living, like, a very radical expression of Christianity.
Right.
Thank
you, Josh Minter, for that.
Minter. I was, like, very drawn to that. I was drawn to you as a person, but, like, that part of you, I was like, that, like, really struck me and like drew me in about you. Because I think, you know, that was a big part of my like relationship with God when I was younger. And seeing someone actually living that way was just so cool for me to see. I thought you were so cool. I still think you're cool.
No, where have I gone?
You're still cool. You're cool in like a much deeper, cool way. So like that was you when we first met. Like that was you 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years ago, which is actually crazy.
It's wild.
That was so long ago. And then, you know, we got married and we decided to stay in America, and we were trying to figure out our life. We were both like young and had no clue what we were doing. And so then we both kind of got random jobs, and then you started working at a church, and then working at a church. And then at the end of like the pandemic, or like, yeah, it was like 2021, late 2021.
Yeah.
We had renovated this vintage Airstream, and it was like the first time you ever handled like a screwdriver and a hammer, and like actually built things with your hands.
Well, technically the tiny house.
Well, yeah,
then,
but like the tiny house we started and then sold and bought the Airstream. So I guess I kind of umbrella that as one thing. But and then you started doing like a lot of construction stuff. And then we moved to California and we did BSSM. Anthony did BSSM for 3 whole years.
Which is Bethel Supernatural School of Ministry.
Mm-hmm. And like, you know, that felt very us. That felt very like, we're the spontaneous people who do whatever crazy things and we just go for it. And I feel like throughout those years, like honestly, I feel like those years in California were the years where we like grew up. Like we had our first baby. We really like, there was a lot of like challenging things in those years that we had to face. And those were also the years where we like began for the first time ever since we had gotten married, like 5 years prior, began actually wrestling with like, what does it actually look like to just live authentically? And you always had like, you were doing remodeling and construction stuff on the side, but then like you ended school in May and then you like went head first into doing this full time.
Right.
So it's just kind of like, it can feel very like whiplash when you're like, you're doing ministry, and in like the Christian ministry like stream that we come from, it can be very intense.
Right.
And then like, you know, you're like, all right, clock out of that and let me clock in and like drill I don't know what you construction people do. You paint a wall and you do the
whatever
you get dirty and then and you have your tools and you do stuff and then there's a house. So like witnessing you throughout that whole turn of events and you having both these things being part of your life. What was your process like when you were in school, and like what you were just talking about, your experience with being in that environment and wanting to feel successful? Like, do you feel like at the end of those 3 years, you did find some level of like peace? Of like, how do I have peace outside? Or when you transitioned out of school, how did you like maintain that feeling of like, I'm at peace with what I'm doing, even if I'm not doing this thing that feels big, feels like loads of impact that I can like witness right in front of me? Like I'm changing people's lives versus now I'm like hammering and...
Right. Yeah, well, I think to answer that story, probably goes back all the way to like the days where all I wanted to be was a worship leader, you know? And I think that was like the core of everything I care about. Like most people that know me as the worship leader.
True.
They know me as the singer, the guy who plays the healing rooms, the guy who is like benevolent and always like there for people. But I feel like a lot of stuff happened in between, a lot of pain, a lot of feeling like when I turned 30, it really hit me hard. And I realized, wow, I'm not even close to where I thought I'd want to be.
Yeah.
Like, was it a mistake? Like, did I choose the wrong thing? Should I have just gone on my own and
I bet you, I have not turned 30 yet, but I bet you everyone else out there who's turned 30
I'm sure. Yeah.
can resonate with that.
Yeah, it's tough stuff, man.
I have a couple more years till I get to that crisis.
Yeah. Enjoy the process now. I think when I came to BSSM, I had this thought in my mind, like, wow, I would get on teams. I would like thrive. I would give of myself as a worship pastor, like pour my heart out, see people transformed. And, in our realm, we come from the charismatic Christian realm where the prophetic words were something we really held dear. We even now have a document where we have all our prophetic words written down, and we try our best to
remember them,
to go through them, to process things. And you do a better job at this because you wrote it all down and you bring it up all the time. I feel like coming back to now, I'll go back again, but I just feel like I'm kind of burned out in this realm at this point in time. Kind of how I got here, going back to that space again. I just felt like first year, nothing happened. I think out of this disappointment, I kind of just put it on the back burner and said, I think I wanting to be really good at something. I want to be recognized for something important.
Right.
Whatever the environment needed, I kind of like morphed
You're like,
into.
I'll be that.
Right. Which at Bethel, the focus is very prophetic orientated. So I just said, okay, this is what is important here. I will pour myself out in this way. Because obviously I love the Lord, and people here really seem to need this space.
Right.
And I wouldn't have said it back then, but I think now, in retrospect, looking back, I realize just how much I become a chameleon in my life. And I'm just really good at pouring myself out wherever.
Which that aspect of who you are is beautiful. And I like really admire that part of you that's like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to give my all to it. Like I'm going to fully invest myself into doing this, going after this.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is also true, that you have to be aware of.
Right. I think it's both. And, right. I don't regret a single.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you grew a ton. We both grew
it was incredible.
Lot.
But I think I've kind of given up on my musical dream. And I've like put it on the back burner, still trying to struggle with that.
Is that because you feel like at the root of it, it might have just come from that dream was like, oh, I just want to be the thing that everyone like loves. Like I just want to be a pop star because everyone loves that.
No,
or do you think that there's a
that
part
has
of you
always
that's
been the core.
yeah?
I think
Because that's what needs to resurrect. Is that?
I think as far as that I can remember, like drums was so important to me when I was 5, that like there was something in me that desired music.
Yeah.
When I sing still to this day, not just a random singing, but like singing in a setting around chairs and in a living room, there's something that comes alive in me. I feel like I'm thriving in that space, but I don't know why I'm struggling to press into that.
Right.
When it's not asked of me.
Yeah.
I think there's still a lot to process in that realm, obviously.
Like, that's an interesting conversation, I think. Like, people who are performers, who, like, love to be in the spotlight and love to make people laugh, love to entertain people, that can easily be, like, I'm just trying to get people's approval. I'm just trying to get this hole filled inside me. But there also is, like, a pure version of that. There also is, like, you know, a little kid who just genuinely loves to put a smile on people's faces. And so it's going on the journey. It really is just like, okay, am I willing to go on the journey to let the layers of the onion get peeled back and shed off the things I don't need anymore, that I need people's approval, that I need to feel like I'm the best. I need to feel like I'm succeeding. Like all these things that we're trying to fill to get to the core that's like actually really pure.
Right. I think I always wanted to perform, but in a good way. And I feel like over the years, I think somewhere in first year, I think I was standing next to you and we're worshiping and I was like, oh, I just want to be up there. And I think you said a statement like you should be able to enjoy worship.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, which is fine, but that's...
you should, but...
But that's the environment that...
Yeah,
like,
I mean, even the very word performance in Christian culture gets such a bad rap.
Right. When
it's
actually
like we have
there's certain people who, that's where they come alive. And you can obviously worship Jesus off stage, on stage, but...
Yeah, for sure.
Like, there's something in me that was always... Like, I come alive in that space. And I think it's more than just at a church setting, I feel like.
Yeah, because you've always loved going to concerts. You've always loved that, I think.
Was recent, like Matt Corby concert. One of my favorite people on the planet musically. Man, I guess I forgot how good it felt to to get goosebumps while listening to music because I utterly enjoyed the musical aspect. There was no expectation there. It was just legitimately you listening to the music to enjoy it. And I think I've like forgotten to do that because in worship setting, it's very much has nothing to do with you.
Right.
And it's all this empty yourself of any desire, any needs, any focus. It's not about what you need in this time. It's about what you can give him and worship him.
Yeah.
And I think there's something that like, there's a disconnect for me in that realm.
It was just kind of hard to reconcile the two. Like, how does this part of me fit in this context?
Right.
Well, that concert was so fun. It was like fall last year when we still lived in California. We lived 3 hours away from San Francisco. And we literally like drove for 3 hours to make it to the 8 p.m. or 7 or whenever.
Right.
Or I think we got dinner first, like a short dinner. And then we like stayed and then we drove home and got home at like 3 or 4 a.m.
Yeah.
We just were like, we just made it happen.
Yeah, because it was
so
like
fun.
the only concert he's done in like 8
It was
8
beautiful.
Years. It was phenomenal.
It was just so beautiful. I mean, I will not pretend to like be an expert or know what I'm talking about in this space, but part of me also asked the question of like, I wonder if our like modern church, if we've made such a big deal of music itself being the expression of worship instead of worship meaning we worship God in so many of these different parts of our life. And we've compartmentalized it into it's the music, it's the person singing on stage, and then we sing along with them, or we follow their lead of where they're going to take it or whatever. And I wonder if we've kind of made it into this box where the focus is so much on that if that was maybe a little bit more like the idea of worship would open up and flood into all the different areas of our life, like we worship him in all these other ways, that weird pressure wouldn't be there of like when you're a singer, a musician, or even a Christian singer, there's like this weird pressure of like the giving glory to God and I can't have a good voice almost, or like if I have a great voice, like I can't really talk about it because that's weird and not humble.
Right.
And it just, there's a weird thing there. And I'm just wondering if it's necessary. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, because like you're saying, when we were in the Matt Corby show, it was just like you even mentioned this the other day, how like it got to like a few of his songs where everyone just like got quiet.
Yeah, dead quiet.
Yeah, and we were just listening to him. And normally it shows like everyone's like singing top of their lungs, enjoying
pop
being
music,
there. Yeah,
like Harry Styles, where
yeah,
freaking out.
Yeah, it's a good time. But like at that show, it was like we were just kind of sitting back and watching.
It was so technically sound and sonically perfect that I didn't want to.
That's funny. Yeah.
Like, add anything to. I just wanted to.
You just want to like take it in.
I think there was a couple times I literally shed tears.
You did.
I like.
That's the kind of thing I do
times.
all the time, but not you.
When the other times I do that, and which was Friday, which I was sitting on my truck bed eating lunch, and I was watching reaction videos.
Yeah.
To Dirty Loops. Dirty Loops. Someone was reacting to it, and like. Yeah. And seeing the pure joy on the reaction's face was like, I was like tearing up, like my eyes were watering, and I was like feeling so much joy. It's just something about people playing in excellence, but also like music is supposed to be fun. And I feel like we've stripped that completely from music in church. We stripped that from music in, and this is my opinion. Obviously everyone has a different, but I just lost any desire for music. And I'm trying to like pick up the pieces again and put it together, because I want to use what God has given me, or what I feel I truly makes me come alive.
Be the person He made you to be in every area of your life.
Exactly. Which in marriage, which is a whole different topic too, but it's the same thing. I think it comes back down to that wanting to be the best in everything I do, which has a positive and a negative aspect. Yeah,
but it's also kind of like wow, the grace of God too, because sometimes He'll sometimes he'll protect you from being in a situation where the weight of like the being in the place where you're performing, you might have not come to this point where you realized that you were doing that.
Right.
You might not have gotten there, might not have gotten there as quick, versus like you not being in that, we're in the music space in BSSM, kind of gave you a chance to reflect upon that.
Right.
And to see how you were doing the same thing that you used to do with music in other areas of your life. And you're like, oh, there's a pattern here.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily just doing music for the joy of it like I should be, like I used to.
Right.
Like the little kid who loved to just drum and loved to make people smile and loved to give people a feeling when he got on stage.
Absolutely.
Now I'm actually doing this.
There's a true purity in that realm.
Yeah.
And it was truly never focused on wanting like any kind of recognition. It was truly like I loved seeing people set free. Doing the same thing Matt Corby did, like using my voice in such a way that is sonically beautiful, that it truly impacts the heart and the mind.
It's really no different than me painting a beautiful painting.
Right.
Or someone else
Difference is like you're allowed to paint.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
To joy, but music.
But you're a prideful person if you have a good voice.
Music does not have that same, like, you don't have that right in music.
Yeah. And I understand where it's coming from. I do. I can see how we got here.
Right, 100%.
And I can see that it is a hard thing to reconcile. But yeah, so I mean, this is not a like, let's throw the church under the bus and pick apart all the things that are wrong.
I think it's a lot of hurt and disappointment.
Exactly. It's just, in the to honor the name of the podcast being honesty.
Yeah. I mean, it's just I'm just come to a place where this is how I have to live. Yeah. Otherwise I burn out or I feel empty inside. I think it's really important just to be truly honest. Right. And straightforward. Yeah. I think that's what changed my life too. Like the reason, like third year in school in BSSM, it's with Peter Haynes, like him pointing out, like, look on a whiteboard, and him and Jess Spond and the team pointing out, look, coaching is in every part of your life. And I realized, man, like, this is a big part of my life. This is what I do. And partly negative in my relationships too is I tend to become a coach in relationships, and it's like it never tends to just be mutual. That's something I'm working on in this space too, is like, what does it look like just to have a normal relationship where it's not always super deep, but you just have fun and you chat about life. You don't have to give advice and I tend to always do that kind of thing. I don't know if I'll be able to verbalize this well, but I've come to a point where I really believe that, in all of these areas, aspects of our life and these different things we do, we can't just label it all as like, oh, it's bad that I do that. Because if you say it's bad that I do that, then where's the part of you that wants to coach people? And it's like in all of these areas, there is really like a pure form of that thing that can take expression in our life. For you, that would look like, I truly love sitting down with people and helping them get unstuck. And like, I've seen you do that with me over and over and over again. I've seen you do that with loads of people all around us in every context we're in. I see you do it over and over. And like, that is so genuine and so pure and like anointed. And like, God uses that. And it's like this you and God thing that you have, that you do. But I feel like in every, part of our life that we have things like that, there's always this other kind of shadow side of it that's like, well, I don't always have to coach in every relationship I'm in. And I need to figure out how to have just friends. Right. But so like, I feel like I used to just label like a good, bad label on things. Or I would be like, let me just stop doing that. Or I'm doing this again and I just stop. Instead of looking at what is it that I'm doing. Like Chris Valentin has this statement that I don't know why, it just was like a light bulb moment for me that I heard him say last year, where he was like, your greatest weaknesses are usually your greatest strengths overemphasized. So like,
if you're overemphasizing this one thing that's a really big strength in your life,
Right.
it can turn into something that's not good for you anymore and not good for other people
Right.
anymore either.
100%.
And I can look at my own life and see that too. But
Would you say that, how would that realm play in like writing for you?
in writing,
Writing and the things that matter to you, things that you're going after now, like how did that develop?
I would say,
what is it about confidence
I
that you're
would
searching
say,
for?
like, when I was, I don't know, probably, I think a big turning point for me was when I had our son 2 years ago. Prior to that, I was the person who, you know, like in our stream that everybody gives prophetic words to one another, which is like when you get an impression that you believe is from God and you tell it to someone else.
Right.
And it's always like meant to be encouraging and meant to shed light on the identity that person has in God.
Yeah.
I would always get words that were like, oh, you have a voice and you need to use your voice, or like, what such and such has stolen your voice and you need to like step out into the light, and or like, don't shrink back, like you're big, like God has made you big. And just like words that were some version of that, like I got over and over, like an annoying amount, to the point where I was like, stop telling me to be big. I'll be quiet if I want to be quiet. You can't make me talk, you know? And to me, it almost felt like pressure of like it almost felt like people's perception of me was that I was shy or reserved or not confident.
Right.
And I was like, I don't want people...
It's like your quiet voice.
Yeah, like just because I'm not this like huge personality in the room, or I let other people speak up before I do, doesn't mean that I'm like not confident. So it was for years. I don't know if I would have like even realized it was happening, but now hindsight, I totally do. It was this like tug of war thing where I was always like, oh yeah, I do need to be bigger. I need to show up more and be like more assertive. And then like on the other hand, I'd be like, well, no, that doesn't feel authentic to who I am. Like, I'm a gentle person. I'm naturally like just laid back, and like I don't need to be. I'm not a person who needs to be in the spotlight or like really enjoys that or gets fulfillment from that.
kind of the opposite in a way.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm not like that. I'm like, no, please take the spotlight.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was a long time of where I thought that I had to figure it out by myself. I thought that if I do have a confidence problem, which if on some days I thought maybe I did, on other days I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm just chill. But I would get these words all the time and it felt like pressure. So I think for a long time I was like constantly like, I need to figure out how to fix this about myself. But what really broke through for me finally was after we had Jasper. I think the process of becoming a parent made me really care way less what other people thought of me.
Yeah, I feel like the same.
You do?
Sure. Absolutely. Like when people break me down,
you're like, cool,
like,
whatever.
It's like, bro, I've lived some life at this point. Yeah. Like I think family unit became more important to me in marriage. And now having a kid, you realize, wow, I just don't have that much time to waste.
Yeah, and you're like, well, I'm like, I've got Anthony. I know he loves me and likes me. So I really don't care.
Yeah, that insecurity slowly left for us at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think trust was a major point too. I think even in marriage, I felt the same way kind of when we finally got married, we eloped, in Chicago. The first night we laid in bed, I was like, oh, man, that there was a hole inside of me, an insecurity hole of not feeling like I could fully just let go and trust. That like filled after we signed the papers, which I never thought would have been the case. I was an insecure mess, like people who don't know the story, when we were in South Africa and this is before we got married. She would hold a dog and I would be like, why aren't you sitting next to me? Like, why are you spending time with the dog?
How dare you touch something that's not me?
Yeah, so dumb. But I understand now looking back. It's just I was looking for that trust. I don't know why my
You
body.
just felt like unsure.
Yeah. And it was powerful, which doesn't make your problems go away.
For sure.
But
it can illuminate them. It
yeah,
usually does.
Usually does, but in the same way, it's also this, like, there's a reason why Christians and non-Christians, everyone still gets married, because there's this like feeling of, oh, you chose me for life, and now I can rest.
Yeah, there really is, especially if if you both are consistently reinforcing that feeling. It definitely gives a feeling of like security and safety.
100%.
And then, you know, you do things to each other that like sometimes break that down, and then you rebuild on it. But
which especially the last 3 years has happened a ton in our marriage.
Yeah, but also part of that has been, you know, we had our son.
Yeah. And
that made us realize, I think both in our own ways, how much more we needed to be emotionally aware, and how much more we needed to go back and like heal some things that were open wounds, like from our life.
Really forced us to do that.
Yeah, it showed us that those things were there, that we were kind of like just never really paid attention to. It just wasn't what we were focused on in previous chapters of our life.
Right.
And so I think, I think that like that journey of becoming a parent really like set off this whole journey I've now been on for the last 2 years, where now like here I am 2 years later, and I'm like, my level of confidence from like me 5 years ago to me now is like just not even, I don't even feel like the same person.
Wow.
But it wasn't because of like me introspecting or me trying to figure out how to be different. And I don't know, I'm not trying to take away from anyone else's story who they might have gotten a prophetic word like, oh, you need to use your voice. And then they decided the next day, I'm going to use my voice in a big way. And then maybe they get breakthrough in that day. So maybe that does happen to people, but that wasn't what happened to me. Yeah. What happened to me was, it was a journey. It was like a process that I'm still on, but I'm significantly like, I've put time and work and energy and engaged my heart with God through the last 2 years to get to where I am now. And I've just seen how it wasn't through me making something happen or just, oh, let me just decide to believe in myself. Like that didn't work for me. Yeah. It really did not work.
Yeah. Honestly, or even I think like, it works for most people.
Like cause like our whole marriage, you would be super encouraging to me and be like, no, you do have, like, you're a great writer. Like, you tell me these encouraging things all the time. And it would just go through one ear, out the other. Right. You know that, right?
Totally. Yeah. So
do you feel like that's changed about me now?
Yeah, but I'm wondering, like, what changed?
What changed?
I feel like this is the first year since January. I feel you got that word to write a book.
I got that word last November, a year ago.
Yeah, and I feel like for some reason you went from, I started a business and I kind of let it go because of
I had like zero self-esteem.
Right, you had, but I feel like what changed? I feel like I'm sure everybody wants to know the answer. Like, why are we even?
How do you go
from
from zero self-esteem to a little bit more than zero?
Right, like why have you stuck so long with this new project instead of the others where you put in the time, but truly in the back of your mind you never believed it would have worked out anyway? So
I think when I look back now, so to give context to this, I've started a million gazillion different businesses and done all these different things and, you know, had all these big dreams that I would go after, but then never finish and never like, for whatever, like many different reasons, I would like self-sabotage them or I would just quit because I decided I didn't like it that much or all kinds of different things. So that's what you're talking about. And I had grown to the point where when we moved to California, or even like up to the point when we had our son in 2022, I had gotten to the point where my self-esteem and my confidence in myself was like literally just very, very low. It was zero. And I think it was because it was almost like I had built history with myself that I could not be trusted with anything. And I began to believe that because I had done things and carried different situations out in these ways that confirmed in my mind, like, oh yeah, you might start that new thing, but it's definitely totally not going to work out because how many things have you ever finished, Mary? Like, you're really not going to do that. And so I think I had just like built this thing with myself that I wouldn't be able to accomplish anything important or anything that I cared about. And when we first had our son, that was an easy thing to push to the wayside and not think about, because my whole life was engrossed with, I'm taking care of this new baby, and that's all that really matters. And then, like, you know, time goes by, and 6 months postpartum, and then a year postpartum. And I think it was what you're talking about when I was November last year. And I got this prophetic word from some really amazing people that we know. We don't like do life with them, and they live in Germany, so weren't really up to date with like what's going on in our life and stuff. But we did know them. They were in town, and he gave me a word about that I would write a book that would be just like God would use it to like breathe life and order into people's, and like peace, like true peace into people's households. And obviously I love the word. I've always wanted to write a book. And it was right around my birthday last year. And then you also had prayed over me the night of my birthday.
Yeah, you asked.
Yeah, I was like, please, I need something. So he prayed over me, and you wrote down like a couple like really, I don't know, it just, you know, like sometimes you just hear something and you can't really say why, but it just lands, and it just feels like, yes, that's it. Yeah. Like, that's exactly it. And yeah, that was how that felt for me, was like that guy's word, our friend, and then these two other things that you had told me, which were kind of in essence, like, I see you stepping out into new things, not knowing exactly where they're gonna go, but you're choosing to say yes anyway. And like, just some things to that extent. And I just felt so much of life on it. But I also didn't really know what to do with it then. Kind of tried to like start an Instagram account and like write things. And then I just like kind of felt weird about it and overthought, like I always do. And then I just like got rid of it because I was like, no, never mind. And then January happened last year. And that was a huge turning point for me, where I basically had this very subtle encounter with God. You know, we always think that we need something really big and dramatic.
Hey, that's a topic in itself. Right there.
It really is. It
Talk
really
about
is.
that later.
Yeah, but for me, it was like a very subtle thing, where just a thought, it was like I was doing dishes one day, and just this thought popped into my head. And then I recognized like, oh, like this, like there's so many of these ideas within Christianity that I'm like, have been for years living with, but not really, I'm believing in them conceptually, but I'm not like applying them as if I really believe them, which is another funny thing. Like, how can you go through 3 years of being in BSSM environment, being in Bethel's environment, and still, you know, like be at the end of that and still feel that way? But it's possible.
Yeah, it's common.
Yeah.
It takes long to build culture.
Yeah.
I think someone said it takes like 5 to 10 years to build a culture. And I think we listen to concepts and we try them, but it takes time to process. And you're not just processing present, you're processing past.
Right.
And then you're processing future, especially in this realm where you're given words of what's to come or encouragement of what you can be. And you're processing these things in real time.
Yeah.
Past, present, future. And it's a lot to take in.
So I think what changed for me, your question was, how did my confidence grow from what it was to how I feel now? And I think at the center of that is just the simple difference of, before, I felt like I had to be the person that changed that about myself, and I had to figure it out somehow. Versus the mentality shift of, I can just trust the process and I don't have to figure it out. I can trust the process and I can just go where it takes me. And sometimes it takes me into these moments of healing, or going on into these tough places of like dealing with my insecurities, and it brings me to some memory I totally forgot I had, or like just trusting the process. And for me, being a Christian and believing in the Holy Spirit, I believe the Holy Spirit is going to lead me through that journey into where I need to go, and I can trust that he'll do that. And the difference is I'm not being passive. I'm just choosing to follow instead of me being the one who has to figure it out and has to fix it about myself, or has to be better, do better. And so I think that's what's changed for me. Like at the core is like the whole confidence thing is it just happened. Like not because I was trying to focus on being a more confident person or being more like having higher self-esteem or whatever. I didn't try to do that at all. I just got swept up into this journey that God had for me that I chose over and over again. Okay, it might feel bad, it might feel sucky, but I'm going to engage anyway. And I'm going to do the hard things. And it's like you become the kind of person who can carry the dreams that you had when you were a little kid. And like we were talking about earlier, you know, your dreams when you were a little kid of wanting to be a musician.
Right.
Or a worship leader even. And like you're on the journey right now where like you are becoming the person who will walk that out. But
Right.
it's not just like, it's not this black and white thing. It's a journey.
Yeah, it's true. I think the analogy we spoke about earlier about, it's like, I think I was always chasing the tabletop experience, the mountain experience. So at the end of the day, it's like, that's what we think is going to change our lives. You think of
The big things.
I think of celebrities. You've made it.
Totally,
like
yeah.
You've hit the jackpot. Let's say you won $1 billion, or
You finally do the thing that was your dream
Yeah.
when you were 10.
Absolutely. I think it's like the mountaintop experience. But people think, oh, like that's what I want to achieve. But you don't realize, if the analogy is played out fully, yeah, how do you get up a mountain? You get up a mountain by climbing up the mountain.
Yeah.
And climbing up the mountain is hard. It's painful. You sweat. You're struggling all the way up.
Yeah.
And you get up the mountain. But what happens when you get down the mountain? It's easy.
Yeah.
Running down the mountain, let's say it's not a rocky
Well, you
mountain.
catch wind. You
Yeah.
have, yeah.
Yeah, it's there's no resistance. The only resistance is you having to slow down, otherwise you tumble and fall.
Yeah.
And I think if you put that analogy in real life, in your life or our lives, if you're running down the mountain, or you're hitting into your place of your comfort zone, the simplicity of letting life happen to you, and
Yeah.
then before you know it, you're
Complacency.
spiraling, you're falling into the same patterns you were.
And it can happen fast.
Yeah, mine was pornography, and pornography leads to fantasy. Fantasy leads to questions about what you want to do. Did you make the right choice? And before you know it, you are throwing away your life, and you're compromising who you are. And that's what I'm talking about. You're in it's not the hills and valleys. It's legitimately you're just sprinting the way down so that you can get to your destination as quick as possible, which in our case is, when you're spiraling, it's rock bottom.
It's easy to go downhill fast.
Yeah, it's really
It's
hard
to go uphill and get to those mountaintop things we think are going to be so incredible. It takes, like, when I ride my bike, I love riding my bike because I love like the feeling of getting places fast.
Yeah.
But it's not like in the car. It's like
Right.
It's like you feel the wind. But with bike riding, I feel like it's also an analogy for me of like life with God. Because it's like, even for me, even when I'm going uphill, it's part of my ride. Like I'll it's got all these different terrains, and you don't go uphill. I would never choose a route that just had me go uphill the entire time. That would be awful. But like you do these routes that have like a mix involved.
Right.
And when you're going uphill on your bike, it takes push. It takes challenge. You have to engage. You have to set your gear right. You have to,
Right.
you have to push. You have to sweat.
Right.
But even that, it's not like void of joy or fun or
Right.
like it's still riding a bike, which
And stop expecting yourself or people around you to always live the drive uphill. It's like when you look on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you're looking, it seems like everyone is living the uphill life with ease. There's no difficulty. People have put in very little time and they have found great success. Or the people who are super spiritual, or the person who's the best guitar player. They're
you
like,
just
wow,
think
you
like
just know it."
you were born that way.
But stop putting that expectation on people around you and on yourself, and understand that a real life consists about the difficulty of uphill, which should involve you truly processing what's going on, truly allowing yourself to feel, which in shrinking was, which I thought was a cool concept where, not spoiler alert, but how the therapist was telling the little girl, a young girl, spend 15 minutes, put on the most emotional soundtrack that you love and just let out all emotion for 15 minutes. Once the alarm goes off, go back to your life. And I thought it's like, wow, how little do we actually allow ourselves to feel pain? And how little do we actually allow ourselves to go where we need to go to actually start living a life like worthy of being called like a human.
Sometimes it's like it's okay if life is a little bit hard. It's okay if you go through hard things, and instead of having the expectation that it wouldn't be.
Right.
And reframing it where it's not like being hard is necessarily even a bad thing, but like scripture even says, like, take joy when you face trials of many kinds, because the trials you face produce perseverance, and you can follow that all the way to the end, that it produces hope.
Absolutely.
So it's like, that's so counterintuitive to me, because I'm like, well, if I never face a challenge, like as a little kid with these big dreams, I never had tasted disappointment before. I had never done anything to make myself disappointed in myself.
Right.
It was easy to hope when I was a kid.
Right.
It was easy to dream when I was a kid. I thought anything was possible. I had a bunch of crazy dreams. But now, like, it feels like so much harder to dream or hope because of the presence of disappointment and challenge and trial that you face. But actually, scripture says
it's normal.
It's actually, that's the maturing process. It's actually what's maturing you and creating in you the character that it takes to be a person filled with hope, to be a person capable of dreaming.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I have like lived that in part, and that has finally become real in my life.
Right. It's like you're no longer people pleasing.
Sometimes I do still, but
yeah, it's interesting.
Not as frequent.
It's 100% true. It's like my work, I want to please my boss. Even in the dysfunction of my life right now, in friendships and trying to understand and unpack that, I think there's areas that I thought were okay, but there's always another layer.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's okay. It's okay to be in the process of unlayering the onion called your life.
Yeah.
And be content with the process.
Yeah.
But only be content if you've actually said yes to the difficulty of going where you need to go, and don't allow yourself to be numbed by things around you like scrolling or pornography or friendships that are killing you and
getting
pushing
super
you,
busy.
Or leaving everything to success or working your life away. Like, get into the difficult things, spend time with your family, like ask the questions that you always wanted to ask, even if you think it will upset the people around you. You need to be honest with yourself. You have to start there. It starts with honesty in your marriage, in your life, friendships, your mom, your dad, your dog, your cat. Just start somewhere. Promise you, it will change your life completely. If you just say, it's time for me to just be brutally honest with myself first, and then speak to the safe people around you first. Confess what you need to confess. Turn from the old ways, and you can only do that if people actually know who you are. It's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's took me a long time, and there's probably years and years ahead for me of processing.
Same here.
But for both of us, but like we're in the best place we've been in our marriage because of that.
Yeah, which helps give perspective too of like, okay, you know, as more hard things come up and more things just come up along the way.
Yeah.
It makes it worth it to engage with pain, because you know that the pain is unto you being more fully who you were made to be.
Right.
And with that, you just feel so much better too. You just feel lighter. You just feel like you can be yourself. You're not worried. You're not in your head.
Right.
And you just naturally are a more confident person 100%. Without even trying to be.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So take the journey.
Yeah. Go where you need to go.
Yeah. And it will be worth it.
I agree. Yeah. Well, thanks for watching. We really appreciate if you guys would subscribe and like on this channel. This will be the first video that is put up on the YouTube channel. And for those listening on the podcast, just the audio, please keep listening. If this is meaningful to you, share it, put it out there, because all of us, we all need to have good voices in our lives. We need positive, encouraging voices in our lives to tell us we can do everything we need to do if only we press in and we go where we need to go. Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Peace out.
Peace out. Hey, town. There you go.
Throw it on the floor.